So John, Ash, are you guys ready to discuss more rumors?
Of course.
I guess so.
I hope you're ready, because we've got a big rumor to discuss here. Now, normally, Derek would take the lead in these Pokemon discussions, but he's unfortunately out of town at a preview event. So I'm sorry to say you're all stuck with me this time, but I think that actually might work out, and you'll soon see why. Now, interestingly, this rumor actually came out in two parts. The first part coming out on April 1st via a post on 4chan by someone named RealLeak, so it means it has to be true, right? With a somewhat detailed breakdown of the major changes and key features of Pokemon on Nintendo Switch. Now, at the time, it went largely overlooked, probably because it was posted on April Fool's Day. However, today, the same poster followed up with a second post with some more details, and it caused the whole thing to pick up more steam. So in today's post, RealLeaks is claiming that the official names for these two games are Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, and even included a logo of the Pikachu one. Well, Cerebi actually took the rare occasion to tweet about this rumor, lending it some major credibility, and it may or may not match up with some things we've heard ourselves. So let's do a quick recap of the full rumor in case you missed our earlier update. So according to RealLeaks, these games are essentially remakes of Pokemon Yellow on Nintendo Switch, but this time there's going to be two versions as we already mentioned, Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. And like in Pokemon Yellow, these Pokemon will apparently walk with you on the world map too. And with the apparent return to the Kanto region, Red and Blue will play a role in the story, with you and your rival being new trainers. But this time HMs are out by being replaced with the Poke Rides from Alola. Furthermore, there's going to be a hub for online players, there's going to be some level of Pokemon GO integration, which is probably causing the biggest outcry right now, and apparently catching Pokemon works a lot like in GO too, whatever that means. There will also be rewards in the game, as well as in Pokemon GO for linking the two together, and then there'll be a new accessory that can work with Pokemon GO as well as these two new games. Finally, they say we should expect an announcement soon and that the game's releasing this year. And kinda related to this, Emily Rogers also recently blogged that we should expect to see the games before the end of the month. Whoa, so that's all the details for right now. So, John and Ash, before we get into our opinions of the rumors, I want to find out whether you think these are credible or not.
I think it's real.
Yeah.
But the title's kind of scary. You know, to have Pokemon Go, which was a spin-off, is now kind of making its way into the mainline games. And I'm kind of scared to how much it'll be integrated. Because that was a very simple take on Pokemon. And if we get stuff like CP, which was like how you level up Pokemon in Pokemon Go, if that comes into the mainline games, I can't see that being something that improves them.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this is real. I am certainly not sure how I feel about it. I can see why they would have taken this direction, in terms of integrating with Go, kind of trying to lower the barrier of entry. But at the same time, the barrier of entry is already really low. And I just don't... It's weird to think that we may finally be getting the Pokemon console game that so many fans have been wanting so far, and yet it doesn't seem like it's going to be at all what people have been wanting. It's certainly not... So far, doesn't seem to be that dream console Pokemon RPG that people have been wanting for decades, really, years, decades. So I can see why, but at the same time, if all this is true, it does feel just a little bit tone deaf.
And all these details kind of link up with that Lapras image leak that we had a while back, where there's a trainer swimming along what looks like a Kanto route on the top of a Lapras with an Eevee on their head. So I'm starting to think that's real too, going by all this info.
That's actually a great point, John, because also, I believe, what's the director's name himself?
Junichi Masuda?
Masuda?
Yeah, there we go, thank you. He tweeted an image not too long ago featuring, I believe, a Pikachu and an Eevee together, like on top of a Pokeball, I think.
Right.
So
yeah, they've been teasing this themselves.
Yeah, right, they have been, so it's all kind of tying together. Yeah, so I guess, assuming this is real, it sounds like you guys think this is a little bit tone deaf. But is it really, given that Pokemon Go is one of the biggest phenomenons in gaming history?
Well, and that's why I said it makes sense why, from a business standpoint, it makes sense why they're doing this. But I'm just talking about, it seems tone deaf in terms of the series' longest, most hardcore fans. But that, again, may not be who they're targeting with this. And if not, as much as it sucks for those fans, I can also understand why from a business standpoint. Because as you just said, Andre, Pokemon Go was nothing short of a phenomenon, so it absolutely does make sense that they would want to try to capture some of that lightning with Pokemon Switch. It's just, they may be trying to do that in a way that isn't going to satisfy hardcore fans, because, the first thing that most hardcore Pokemon fans will tell you is that they don't think Pokemon Go is a very accurate representation of what makes the series so great, in terms of the actual battle mechanics and gameplay in that sense. So, I don't know. I think if all this turns out to be legitimate and we find out that, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee have battle mechanics that are similar to Pokemon Go, There will be rioting in the streets, I think. in the Pokemon streets. I don't think people are going to be happy about that at all.
On Route 1.
Yeah, riding on Route 1, exactly. all across Kanto.
Well, and I guess, right, being Yellow Remix, that does mean this would be a return to Kanto, right? Which...
Right.
I mean, so a lot of this, again, assuming this is all legitimate, does seem to be kind of a... like trying to reach a broader demographic, both players who picked up Go for the first time, but also people who may have not played Pokemon much since the original, which, hey, I just so happen to be. I'm one of the people who loved the original Pokemon games and kind of just fell off the wagon and haven't really been able to get invested in the series since. So I wonder if, they took a look at Go, the success of Go, saw how many people that game was reaching, and was like, wow, that is a huge demographic that, for as big as Pokemon currently is, there's a lot more people out there that could be playing our games.
That sounds exactly to me.
Yeah, it's not a bad move.
Yeah.
You have people who haven't played the game since the originals, like you, and then there's the new audience who haven't played Gen 1. They haven't experienced Kanto before.
Right.
So you're just kind of reaching everyone by going back to the first game.
Yeah, and I have to say, the Gen 1 part of this is not even the part that bugs me. It really is the gameplay aspect. I actually do like the idea of returning to Kanto again, and I've always liked the idea. I always like it when games give you a different viewpoint on an established world that you already are familiar with, and that does seem to be the case here. So that part of it, I actually like.
My question to you guys then is what really concerns you here? Because I think for me personally, like, the names sound like the most concerning part. Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu, just because it sounds more like, reminded me instantly of Hey You Pikachu, which is a total spin-off game, a gimmicky spin-off game on the 64, which this doesn't seem to be. So if we put the titles aside, what specifically here is concerning you? Because the only thing that really stands out to me as being kind of a, like, what type thing is the element where catching Pokemon works like in Go. But I'm not even sure what that means. Does that just mean instead of using a Pokeball item, you slide your finger up instead?
Maybe. What I'm thinking is, like, we battle like normal, but yeah, when it comes to catching the Pokemon, they kind of move around, kind of like they do in Go, and you have to sort of slide the ball and still, like, hit them with accuracy.
Right.
But I'm wondering how that works when docked, like when you're not using the in the Switch and handheld mode. How do you
controls?
like,
just flip your or flick your Joy-Con up.
I guess. Yeah, I guess so.
I just don't know if that's how I want to catch Pokemon. I mean, I'm always down to try new things, I guess, but I guess if that's all they're changing, and if we're taking that direct interpretation of it, and only catching Pokemon is what's changing, then, I mean, okay, sure, but I'm a little worried that, catching Pokemon works like in Go kind of comes alongside a simplification of battle mechanics, and as long as that doesn't happen, sure, but I'm just worried that they're trying to lower the barrier of entry too much here, and really, again, the barrier is already pretty low, and along with those names, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, they feel like spin-offs to me. Like, as you just got done saying, it reminds you of Hey You Pikachu, Andre, and yeah, I have to agree. So, I don't know, if we are only looking at changing how the actual Pokemon catching works and not battling, okay, I think I can get down with that. But if we're looking at an across-the-board reduction or simplification in battle mechanics, I'm not on board with that.
Well, what do you think about that, John? Like, what's your interpretation of that? Because I realize it can go in a few different ways. Like, when I read that, I'm like, oh, it probably just means how you actually literally capture the Pokemon. But it could mean a broader sense too, like just a simplified process across the board.
Well, Pokemon Go's combat is literally just tapping, and I don't know how you translate that over to a console game.
I mean, it wouldn't be Pokemon then if it were just
exactly.
that.
Right, exactly. So I'm kind of thinking here. I kind of touched on this earlier. What if they bring on the CP gauge, which lets you, like, level up your Pokemon rather than having typical experience points, which I don't like the sound of that, but I think that's one of the key parts of Pokemon Go. So what if they sort of brought along that feature and changed how you level up your Pokemon and sort of how you interact with them? That's a possibility, but that's one feature that I am not looking forward to if they do implement that.
Yeah, same here. It almost feels like, and of course it's a little too early to say this, but it almost feels like it could be turning into a Paper Mario issue, where we have these RPG mechanics that we've leaned on for so many years that we've become accustomed to, and they might possibly be ripping those out for this kind of soft reboot-esque type idea, which again might make business sense. I'm not denying that. But yeah, in terms of what longtime fans want, that may not match with that.
You know what? I have one more idea about what they mean when they say capturing Pokemon or catching Pokemon works like in Pokemon Go. And it's all based on that Lapras screenshot that came out some time ago. Whether or not that's legit or not, I don't know. But I do remember that you could see Pokemon on the world map, just like in Pokemon Go. And maybe that's what they mean. What if, instead of having random battles, you actually can, choose to engage a specific Pokemon or not by actually seeing what they are on the map? Kind of like how it works in, any number of RPGs, but like Paper Mario, for instance, or Mario and Luigi, or any other RPG that I can't think of that I don't play them.
Chrono Trigger!
Yeah, there we go, Chrono Trigger! Hey, that's one I played.
Right? That's possible. Yeah, I mean, that actually would be a huge game changer to go from random encounters in Pokemon, which is what we've gotten so accustomed to actually being able to see the Pokemon on the map before you engage it. That would be cool, only because how many hours have we all spent, or at least those hardcore Pokemon fans of us spent, trying to encounter that one specific Pokemon, but you don't know that it's not that Pokemon until you've finished that random encounter animation. So, I gotta say, I mean, even though I've been a little worried about, the simplification of battle mechanics, that angle, I'm a fan of. I could totally get behind being able to see Pokemon on the map before you encounter them.
I don't know, I kind of feel like the random encounter's part of the whole catching them all process, like how you don't really know what's coming up, and that's why you sort of farm in one area just trying to find absolutely everything. And when you can see everything on the map, I think that might take something away from that.
Well, it would definitely take away the repetition and grindiness of it all.
Yeah, see, I mean, you're not wrong, John. I think I'm thinking about this from the perspective of a crusty old adult, where I'm like, I don't have time to sit in my, in a chair and grind for hours on end for a specific Pokemon. But you are right; it would take away that element of the experience.
It'd be a big change, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, as an adult, I'm not sure I'd miss that part of the experience.
I mean, I don't think it'd be any worse than the transition from how RPGs used to work in general to like with Chrono Trigger, how you could see the enemies. I don't think it'd be that big of a change. And I think it would be possible to maybe even retain elements of both if they really wanted to, such as having the Pokemon on the world map being silhouetted at first, perhaps, until you encounter that particular type, maybe, so that we can at least identify which Pokemon you have or haven't encountered before.
Or perhaps there's a way they can still differentiate between tall grass and other things. I don't know exactly how that would work, just looking at this screenshot right now and thinking about it, but I mean, perhaps there's a way they could still differentiate tall grass Pokemon from Pokemon you can just encounter out in the open. Perhaps only Pokemon that you've caught can be encountered out in the open.
Didn't, which one was it? Maybe it was, one of the Pokemon games I played in the last 5 years. Didn't one of them have, shaking grass to indicate there was a Pokemon there?
That was Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire.
Yeah, so what if it just moved around then? So what if you could maybe still see where Pokemon are, but you couldn't tell exactly what they were?
So how do, let's say that you see a Pokemon just sort of shaking up in the wild, and let's say that we go with the leaked screenshot with Lapras, where we can see a Magikarp tail in the ocean. How do we then find another Pokemon? Does it just sort of fade away after a while and then something else takes its place? Or do we just sort of keep moving until we find something else?
That's kind of, I was thinking about that too. I mean, in Pokemon Go, eventually Pokemon who are on the screen just do disappear if you don't encounter them in time. So, I think it would have to be a little bit more elegant than them just simply disappearing. But I could see this, Magikarp just kind of going back out underneath the surface of the ocean, and then another one popping up, perhaps as you keep exploring. But I totally see where you're going with this. This does present practical issues to have to kind of work around.
I guess the ocean kind of provides a perfect reason for Pokemon to kind of come and go. Maybe they could do the same with tall grass, though. If a Pokemon dives into tall grass, it disappears, and then a different one pops out, for instance. Or they could treat it like Earthbound, where if you just move off screen and come back, the enemies are completely different for no reason at all.
Yeah,
which I used all the time to get through some really tough areas.
Oh god, yeah, me too.
I mean, and maybe I don't know how far they want to take this concept, but maybe they can make capturing Pokemon, or the idea of seeing a Pokemon part of the actual gameplay. Maybe you have to sneak up on particular types of Pokemon. Maybe you have to walk up to it quietly without alerting it, so it doesn't go running off or something.
That's true, and also I was kind of struck by what you said, John, about how it would take that element away from the experience. What if that's the point? I mean, what if this?
That's why I stopped playing.
Yeah, I mean, what if that's really the point, given what we're seeing, what we think we know about this potential game, in terms of it being kind of a simplification of what we know about Pokemon, and kind of trying to bring things back to an audience that may have gotten into Pokemon through Pokemon Go. So what if that's kind of the point, taking away that repetition, taking away that grindy aspect? That would be something that would, understandably upset those of us who've been with the series for a long time, but that may be exactly what the point is here.
Yeah, I get that side too. And I always find like the movies have very different vibes to the games, where in the movies you see Pokemon in their natural habitats, just sort of floating around or running around, whereas in the games you just kind of have forests and seas and everything like that. And the overworld's very disconnected to the battles, like the Pokemon don't really exist in the world in the games. So when you're in a big forest, it's just grass everywhere. And I think, if you have Pokemon just sort of wandering around and being in their habitats, it would definitely make the worlds feel far more alive.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's something I've always felt like the recent games could have done that. Ultra Moon actually does to an extent. They have like, if you look in the backgrounds or in the sky sometimes, you can see Pokemon just sort of lounging around, but it's all background material. Like nothing really has an emphasis on the game at all.
Mm-hmm. Right, you're talking about the Pokefinder stuff, right?
Right, yeah.
Which I have to say, as inconsequential as that was, it did, as you said, add a little bit of world building, and I wouldn't mind seeing that return here in this remade Kanto, if that's actually what's happening. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I agree. There has always been this disconnect between the world and the battles, and I would like to see those two married to a degree. I mean, if you go into the Pokedex for any length of time and read some of the entries, the Pokemon world sounds like a hellscape. It sounds terrifying with all these things happening all around you, so it would be nice just to get a sense of, these Pokemon, everything from the cute ones to the really dangerous ones, do live in this world all around you.
Especially if you're going to have a Pokemon following you around persistently, like with Pikachu and Eevee, it makes sense to kind of flesh out the rest of the world and actually see the rest of the Pokemon in their actual habitats. I think, I'm down with this idea. Like, I couldn't tell you exactly why I stopped playing Pokemon. It was, I'm sure, a number of reasons. But if they make the right tweaks, and this might be one of them, it could bring me back. And that kind of excites me. Like, I want something different from the games, and that might be different enough to make it more interesting and less grinding to me.
Right. To be a bit positive for a second, though, kind of, if we look at, let's go Eevee, will Eevee evolve? Because in Pokemon Yellow, Pikachu refused to evolve, and Eevee's a Pokemon who's known for evolving into so many different types. Do you reckon this Eevee's going to refuse to take a stone?
I don't think so. I mean, only because at least with Pikachu, you've got even if he doesn't evolve, you've got a fairly decent Stage 1 or Stage 2 evolution Electric type. With Eevee, you've just got kind of a weak normal type. So I feel like there's a lot less reason to want to keep an Eevee around than a Pikachu, which I know that sounds awful, but I'm like, almost the whole point of Eevee, as cute as Eevee is, why would you be facing the Elite Four with an Eevee, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I would think you'd have to be able to evolve them. Yeah. I agree. What's funny, actually? I think the more concerning part about this whole thing for me, maybe not even concerning is the right word, but with the whole Pokemon GO integration, that actually doesn't concern me too much. It's more just the angle with it being a Yellow remake, because I always felt like having Pikachu just kind of follow you around always felt a little bit gimmicky to me. Even though they were still at their core just blue and red with more features, it just felt a little bit weird having just one Pokemon get all the attention versus all the others who can't follow you around.
Right.
So I wonder how that might be. I mean, I never played Yellow, so I can't fully speak to that, but it just seems odd to have all the focus put on these two characters. Particularly with, so the weird thing for me is, again, I can only speak as an ex-Pokemon fan who totally fell out with the series. It's so weird to me to see Eevee get all this attention now, even though it also is one of the original 151. It's
right.
Like, why did it take 20 years for the Pokemon company to catch up with this?
Yeah, exactly.
Good question.
Or where did this popularity come from all of a sudden?
Yeah, they've given Eevee his own Twitter page called Project Eevee, and this has been going for a while, actually, like the last couple of months. So they've kind of been leading up to this. But yeah, I don't really know where all this Eevee popularity came from. But to go back to the walking thing, they actually had walking animations in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon for every single Pokemon.
Right.
So because they've been using the models ever since Pokemon X and Y and Pokédex 3D and Pokemon GO, they've all used the exact same models. I reckon they're going to reuse those models again for Pokemon Switch and finally use those walking animations to have every single Pokemon follow you around.
That would solve my issue. That would fix it. But I feel like that doesn't seem true to the names, though. Well, I guess it could be. Yeah, I guess the games have always featured like a prominent Pokemon in the box, and it didn't really affect much in the gameplay, right? So
right. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Like, can you catch Eevee in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, because that's a really common Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, John, if you think that they'd be reusing those 3DS models for having the Pokemon walk you around in Pokemon Switch, do you think we're going to see a return of the kind of usual Game Freak formula where we're not seeing a huge jump in graphical quality despite the fact that we're, jumping from 3DS to Switch? Because that's kind of what I'm getting from this.
Yeah, exactly. I reckon even when we do get a big jump, like, look at X and Y and then look at Sun and Moon, that was a huge jump in overworld quality.
Yeah.
But I reckon, like, even in Gen 8, when Gen 8 comes along, I think we're still going to be using those 3DS models for battle, because they are ridiculously high poly.
They look really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I reckon that they've sort of made them to be future-proof, which is kind of why they ran a bit poorly on 3DS. But I do think we'll see a big overworld graphical quality jump in Gen 8. But for this game, judging from that Lapras screen a while ago, I'm kind of imagining something a bit more like Sun and Moon in HD.
Right, that's kind of the feeling I've been getting as well.
It is interesting, though, that it's still weird to me that they are going that route with it, that they just didn't do an upgraded version of Sun and Moon, because now they have to make all new assets for Kanto. Because that wasn't in Sun and Moon at all, right? I think it was hinted at the end of the game from what I've heard.
Yeah, one of the main characters from Sun and Moon went to Kanto right at the end, so they're sort of alluding to some kind of Kanto connection, and maybe she'll be in this game. Who knows? That makes sense actually. If it's not, because it's not a remake, because we know that Red and Blue are in the story from this leak.
Good point. So it can't be an actual remake. It's kind of like a spiritual remake, I suppose.
I guess. I'd love for it to take place after Sun and Moon. That'd be really cool.
That would be kind of cool. Yeah, you go from like this brand new. I mean, you're going from like the newest region they have to the oldest. It is kind of an interesting contrast there. Do you think there might be a chance to go back to Alola from Kanto?
Well, if they're using the same engine, I guess it's not like unthinkable to sort of just touch up those assets and put it back in there.
Never forget Pokemon
maybe.
Stars.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
Right.
they had like a HD tech demo going on, so maybe.
Wouldn't that be something if Pokemon Stars was this the entire time, and Pokemon Stars is actually part of this game where you do go back to Alola?
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
That would be like a return to the whole Gen 2 thing of having Johto, and then at the end of the game, suddenly, oh wow, you can go back to Kanto now, have fun.
So anything else about these details that either excite you or concern you? I mean, because a lot of this stuff is kind of basic, so there's not like too much to really drill into, I feel like.
Yeah,
yeah.
I love how HMs are still replaced by the Poke Ride, because that was kind of... They had a context to that in Sun and Moon, because the whole Alola region works along with their Pokemon, and they have like Pokemon workers as well. So I wasn't sure if that would come back or not. So it's really nice to have that again, because it sucks having just one Pokemon in your party just to use Cut. So it's great to have this.
I remember those days, not fondly.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Alola was the fact that finally they got rid of the need for HM slaves, and now we just have Poke Ride, and I thought that was a lot more fun. And so yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing, just to kind of shine the spotlight on something positive, which is I actually am very glad that Poke Ride's back. So that's great, and as I said before, I actually do typically like it when you get a different view on an established world that you already know. So I do love the idea that you are a different trainer in Kanto interacting with Red and Blue, and even more I like it if it is actually taking place after Sun and Moon. I like the idea of getting a little bit of continuity even from Gen 7, even if they're not going straight to Gen 8, kind of delivering on that hint at the end of Sun and Moon, hey, your character's going to Kanto, let's go follow that up in a new game with a game that takes place after Sun and Moon, but back in Gen 1. I actually think that's really cool if that's what they're doing.
I don't disagree. I mean, I agreed with you before, Ash. Like, one of my favorite things in games is revisiting a prior area, or like an area from a previous game. Like in Banjo-Tooie, when you go back to Spiral Mountain. I always love parts of that, seeing how those areas evolved. So as one who hasn't really revisited Pokemon since the original, it actually does sound kind of cool to be able to go back to Kanto and see it in a whole new light on Switch. From the perspective of one who hasn't followed the series that closely since then, like, I actually kind of find this maybe a little bit appealing.
I do find myself wondering about the species of Pokemon in this new Kanto, only because I'm looking at this Pokemon Go, the fact that it can integrate with Pokemon Go, and I believe that Pokemon Go is about to start getting Sinnoh Pokemon, Gen 4 Pokemon, and if that's the case,
right.
I would be shocked if they went back to Gen 1, but also reduced the national dex back to 151. I just that's too far a regression. I feel like they know that players are going to want to be able to catch more than just the original 151 Pokemon in this new Kanto.
Yeah, and Game Freak actually love having like context in their games, so if this takes place during Sun and Moon, they can just say that Pokemon migrated to Kanto over the time. So it makes sense to have...
yeah.
Actually, what I'd love, actually, is just to have just a mix of everything, but not necessarily have absolutely everything. So kind of like what most games do before you beat the game, where there's maybe, say, 200 Pokemon catchable, but they're not all 150 Kanto. It's just a mix of all generations. I'd really like something like that.
Mm-hmm. Or, hey, this would be kind of a reversal of the Alolan form concept. Have Pokemon from Alola migrate to Kanto, so you've got Kanto-in forms of Alola Pokemon. I think that would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool, actually. I like that idea. So worst case for you guys, what is your biggest concern about this? Like, if we go in the worst case scenario based on these details, what is your greatest fear that this game could end up being like?
The combat being all tappy, like just sort of pressing the A button all the time and having no other depth apart from that. That's my biggest fear.
Yeah, same. I mean, literally the same thing. I'm just worried about an across-the-board reduction or simplification in battle mechanics, and that's what I don't want. I don't mind necessarily actually catching Pokemon in a different way. Like, maybe perhaps the idea you paralyze them, get them down in HP, and that makes the catching process easier. That would be okay.
Right.
But same as John, I just don't want this to become like a tap fest. I don't want that homogenized battle mechanics to, like we've seen in Go, to happen to the main series.
Are there any other Go integrations you can think of beyond the rewards you get in game and whatever that new accessory is? Like, what's that about? What do you think that accessory could be?
I wonder if we see the return of the Pokewalker from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, because it's kind of hard to walk around in Pokemon Go, which you need to do to sort of get candies for Pokemon, because you need to have the app open at all times. So I wonder if they have some kind of accessory, kind of like Pokemon Go Plus, but it interacts with both versions, maybe?
Yeah, I was actually thinking the Pokewalker too, because that's always been a pretty popular accessory among all the different Pokemon accessories there have been. And the Switch being a portable console, that does make sense in terms of, hey, take it out with you. Of course, it's not quite as portable as a smartphone or even a 3DS, but still there is that kind of portable console mentality of, hey, get this Pokewalker accessory and build up rewards in the game while you take your Switch with you and you're walking. I mean, that does make sense.
So, any other things about this that you guys want to talk about? Anything else that concerns you or interests you, or anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up here?
I guess the fact that it says online has a hub for players, so I guess that could potentially suggest that they won't be doing too much to the battle system. I mean, and of course that's extrapolating a lot, but if they're going all in on the online again, one would think they would have to have a pretty meaty battle system for people to want to enjoy online. So that is a possibility.
I'm also wondering if we start off in Pallet Town again, because if you look back at Pokemon Yellow, the first gym is a rock gym, and your starter's electric, and those types just don't merge together. Like, you need to catch another Pokemon, otherwise you're not going to win that battle. So I wonder if we start off in another town, because that kind of makes it a bit more accessible. Like, maybe if you start off in Cerulean City or something, and that way Pikachu has a chance.
Oh, I kind of love that idea. If you're going through the region in a different order than you had to before.
I love that too.
Kind of make it feel a little bit fresher, even beyond the whole visual upgrade and whatnot. Yeah, good idea, John. So where do you guys feel about this right now? Because I know going in, you were very hesitant, and you still sound hesitant. But what are your overall feelings right now? Has talking through this made you feel a little bit better about the potential of this game, or are you still a little bit concerned, especially with those names?
I mean, I like the idea of it, and I think they could get it right. I'm just scared they won't. So if it could be a good game, by all means, it could be a very good game.
For sure, yeah.
That's basically where I'm at. I think there's definite potential here, but the names worry me. The idea of simplifying Pokemon catching worries me. So I do think there's a possibility that this lands and it's awesome, but I can see myriad ways in which they could also screw it up. And when I say screw it up, I don't mean make a bad game. I just mean make it something that longtime fans who've been begging for a Pokemon console game for years, that's not what they'll want.
Yeah, it's tough. depending on what exact market they want to reach. Because if they want to reach someone like me, I kind of want them to put, as you said, screw it up.
Exactly.
Not in the sense that I want them to make an objectively bad game or anything.
No, I know what
but
you
I just want them to do I want them to do something different, something that would, pull me back in. Just because I just got tired of the mechanics, it felt like I was doing this. I did play some of Gold and Silver and dabbled in the subsequent ones. Basically, I have a half-life when it comes to Pokemon games. I play each one half the time of the previous one. So if they can do something new, something a little bit fresher for me that pulls people in like me again, I'm down with that. So even if it means you're going to upset some hardcore fans in the process, because the thing is, like, in order to reach a new demographic, you're going to have to upset some of them because they don't want the game to change that much, right?
And I think there is a way that both camps can be satisfied here. Like, I think as long as they don't go too far in on the Go branding and that idea of simplification, I think there is a way to satisfy both camps here. I mean, I do love the idea of straight up a Pokemon console RPG that takes place in Kanto again, that, is every bit that console RPG we've been wanting. And again, it just really goes back to the battles. As long as they don't oversimplify that too much, then we could be looking at a really fun experience here.
I agree with Ash completely. As long as they find the right balance, I think this could be a really promising game. And it's probably one of the best games to start with on the Switch. This is the Kanto brand is one of the most widely known among Pokemon. And this could just be the game to get people of all ages back on the franchise.
I think that's well said, absolutely. So it's going to be all about that balance, and hopefully it won't be too long until we find out from the sounds of it. So with that, thanks for watching, guys, and of course stay tuned to GameXplain for lots more on Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu once it comes out, if it's real, and everything else Nintendo as well. Catch you later. Bye.